Good afternoon to everyone joining us here today. I'm Norma Ritz-Johnson, Lubbock Chamber Executive Vice President. Before we get started, just a reminder to everyone to please keep your microphones muted to avoid any feedback or noise interruptions. And if bandwidth seems to become an issue, we may need to close off your video in order to make the most of our bandwidth. Thank you again to everyone for joining us today to hear about a new source of loan support for local small businesses through the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance, Market Lubbock, and the South Plains Association of Governments. The Chamber is proud today to be hosting this panel of speakers to talk about this new program and walk you through the details. Once all of the speakers have concluded the briefing, we'll have time for a few questions. So please type those in the Zoom chat function, and we're going to try to get to as many of those questions as possible. First, help me welcome John Augsburg, President and CEO of the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance and Market Lubbock, who will give an overview of the program and discuss the purpose of the funding program that we're talking about today. John.
Good afternoon, and thanks to the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce for helping host this today. We've been monitoring Lubbock's situation regarding small business for this last month to 6 weeks, and have been really trying to understand the impacts that have taken place at all levels, whether it's small business or big business. We also recognize that the Small Business Administration is really truly the biggest potential source of funding for any of our small businesses, large or small. And that there's no ability to compete with the amount of dollars that they have. But we noticed that in this last few rounds of stimulus dollars that have been released, that there was a big challenge for many of the companies here in Lubbock. And it was even proved evident in the survey that the Chamber sent out, where only 3 in 10 companies were actually able to access any kinds of funds coming from the SBA. We started to realize very quickly that many of our small businesses, especially our very small businesses, were going to be extremely negatively impacted by the fact that they couldn't access those funds and the state of our economy. And so we began putting together some sources of funds, $1 million from LEDA and $1 million for Market Lubbock, that we are partnering with the South Plains Association of Governments, Spag, in order to establish a fund that they will administer, in which small businesses can get a relatively low interest loan that has the potential for being converted to a grant, depending on a number of different circumstances. I'll let Spag here in a minute address those things. The main aspect of this is we are really specifically targeting companies that have been in business a couple of years, and we recognize that businesses have we have a variety of different types, some that just got started, some that have been in business 100 years. But we felt that having a track record of companies with a couple of years of experience was very important to target. We also are targeting what we've been calling our very small businesses, which are those companies that have that fit into a category of gross revenues between $100,000 annually and $5 million annually. Obviously, the Small Business Administration recognizes that companies with less than 500 employees are considered small business, and that's the bulk of our companies here in Lubbock. But we wanted to establish this fund to fit this sweet spot to help our companies with some working capital to bridge this economically challenging times, and to make it to where hopefully as our elected officials start to allow companies and commerce to take place here soon, in my opinion, then what you're going to find is hopefully this bridges that gap in that time period. We call this the Support Lubbock Fund, and we now have information about this fund on LEDA's website and also on Spag's website. The application process is through Spag, and so it's on their website as well. And they've just been a phenomenal partner to work with, and we're so appreciative of them in helping us administer this fund. We recognize that there are needs for companies less than 100,000, that there are needs for companies that don't have the 2 years requirement. We also recognize that there's needs for companies greater than 5 million. We know that the SBA has hit many of these types of companies, and some of them they haven't. There's no way to do a program and put one in place that can benefit every single business that's out there. And we are limited on the amount of funds that we can put into this at this time. But we still believe that this will help and greatly impact our community, and therefore provide some assistance to bridge this economically challenging time period. So I'll let Kelly and Naomi, who've just been phenomenal, and they're going to be right in the weeds of this over these next few weeks as we begin to administer. I'll let them kind of take over for discussing more about the specifics on how to access the funds.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Next, we'd like to welcome Kelly Davila and Naomi Couture to discuss the application process, the criteria, and how the funds will be distributed. Kelly is Director of Regional Services and Economic Development at Spag, and Naomi is Loan Program Coordinator there. Welcome.
Great. Thank y'all so much for having us. We're so excited to be partnering with LEDA on this endeavor for the city of Lubbock and the small businesses that are in our community. We want to get right to it, and I think we're going to have some slides that come up to kind of get into the details of how this program is going to work, and hopefully walk every small business through what they would need to do to actually submit an application for these funds. And once we have that up, then Naomi's going to kick us off with some of the details on how to do that. We want to try to answer all your questions on the front end, walk you through what you need to do and how you'll apply, and get us going from there. So I'll let Naomi get us started.
Great, thanks, Kelly. When we prepared this presentation, we really wanted to make sure that small businesses would have a grasp as to who the program was for, what the eligible source of funds were, what the terms and conditions were, and then we'd also like to go ahead and explain the loan forgiveness piece associated with this program and how small businesses can apply. So again, this fund was created for small businesses in Lubbock who have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So the small business has to be at least 2 years old. To be eligible, they do have to be located inside of the city limits of Lubbock. There are 3 funding tiers that John briefly touched upon in his introduction, but the first one is for businesses that have annual gross revenues between $100,000 to $499,000, they're eligible for up to $20,000. The second tier is if they have gross annual revenues of $500,000 to $2.5 million, they're eligible for $40,000 worth of funding, and the final tier is $2.5 million to $5 million. They're eligible for $60,000 under this program. Eligible use of funds. Essentially, this will be used for working capital, and we give a very broad definition of what we expect working capital needs are, but overhead operations, payroll, rent, any short-term use of cash to keep your business open, like utilities. Inventory is definitely eligible. Any raw materials that you might need to keep your business open would be eligible for this program. Next are the terms and conditions. There is no prepayment penalty, so at any point a small business can choose to pay their loan early. The maximum term is a 5-year term. These funds are priced at a 4% fixed interest rate. There is a loan forgiveness option piece that Kelly will go into much more detail in the next few slides. The way that the payments are going to be set up for the first year is that they will be interest-only payments. It will be one loan per small business. And I just really want to emphasize here, we are trying to maximize these funds to impact as many small businesses as possible and to help as many small businesses as possible. So if you are the owner of one or more entities, only one of your small businesses will be eligible for the program. It is going to be on a first come, first served basis upon completion. If you turn in an incomplete package, then we will go ahead and communicate what is left to turn in, but it is first come, first served upon complete. All closing and legal fees will be covered by the program. So next, Kelly will go into much more detail as to how the loan forgiveness piece works with the program.
Great, thank you so much, Naomi. So there are a few differences from a traditional loan program like those that we typically operate here at Spag. And the primary difference is the loan forgiveness threshold that is potentially an option for some of our small business applicants. So there are 2 ways that a small business could end up having part or all of their initial loan forgiven. What we're going to do, as Naomi mentioned, the first year is interest-only payments. At the end of that period, we'll essentially take the 2020 gross revenues for the small business and compare those to the 2019 gross revenues that the small business gave us. And if those gross revenues for the small business are between 35 to 49% less in 2020 than they were in 2019, that business is eligible for 50% of loan forgiveness. So that whatever principal and fees are owed at that time would be reduced by 50%. If we get into that time period and the 2020 gross revenues for the business are 50% or greater than they were in 2019 for the small business, then that business would be eligible for 100% loan forgiveness. Any business not in that category would have the terms that Naomi just went over, 5 years, 4% fixed interest. So we'll be working individually with all of the businesses on the front end as we intake their applications, and then we'll continue to work with them as we go through this first year especially to monitor exactly where they are and if they're potentially eligible for loan forgiveness. Okay, you can scroll on down. I think the big question and what we really want to highlight is everyone's going to want to know, and I know people have already started asking, how do we apply for these funds? We are a small entity and we do a loan program for our region on a regular basis, but this is obviously going to have a lot more interest than we usually get on any given day. So we've set up a special email box. It is support.lubbockfund@spag.org. All questions, concerns, comments, application, documentation, everything needs to go through that email box. I know there were some glitches earlier in the day. I've been assured by our IT folks that is all fixed. So again, that email address is support.lubbockfund@spag, that's spag.org. And it's right there on the screen, and I've put it in the chat box as well. So if you have a question about your eligibility, if you are ready and have the application form filled out, you want to submit your documentation and that form, that email box is where everything goes. And that way our team will be able to sort through what's complete, what questions need to be answered, and how we can best help your business. Step 2, all of these loan applications are going to be processed by our team here at Spag. As John mentioned, we operate several different loan programs, both through Spag and Caprout Business Finance. So operating these type of programs is not anything new for us. We are going to be processing them on a first come, first serve complete process. So we're happy to answer any questions. We're happy to take the application, but in order for that application to be complete and processed by our team, we will need the application form, 2 years of tax returns, a personal financial statement, and current business financial statements. We can take them up to 90 days old, although the newer the better for business financial statements. And you'll see after we go through this presentation, we have the application form for you to look at. We've made it very, very simple. There's not a lot of information we need to collect, just kind of the basics to get everything put together. We do have a local loan committee who will be finalizing all of the decisions that our staff makes in processing those. They're going to be looking for things like any sort of red flags, any conflict of interest, make sure we're following the program guidance as set up. Once that's taken place and your loan's been processed and sent to committee, you'll be notified all again from that Support Lubbock Fund email box, whether or not your loan was approved or declined, and we'll go from there. From there, Spag staff will work with you to close and fund your loan. As John and Naomi both mentioned, we are able to include all of the closing and legal fees associated with that. We're keeping them to a bare minimum, and then we're able to have those covered by the program. So that will not be a cost to the borrower. This last slide right here, or second to last slide, has the information again, because I really want to stress the email box. That's the best way to get a hold of us and get your questions in and get that information, and that is supportlubbockfund@spag.org. If you go to www.spag.org, spag.org, that's our email address. I think if you just say spag.org, sometimes there's a glitch, or so I've been told, so make sure it's www.spag.org. Right there at the top, there's a button that says Support Lubbock Fund, and that'll take you to this slide deck, as well as the application form. So everything you need should be there, and you can access that. As John mentioned, LEDA's website, which is lubbockeda.org, also has a link to our site and some basics on the program, so you can look through that and see what you need. We're here to answer any questions and get this out as fast as possible. We know our small businesses are needing this as quick as possible, so our team is ready to put this together. I think the last is just, again, our contact information, that email address, and where you need to send those questions. And I think we can look at the application form if you have that, Haley.
Well, she's bringing that up. I'd like to go ahead and address just a few comments that are being made in the Zoom group chat. There's a lot of good answers already to some of the questions there, but wanted to clarify just a few items. And that is that we need 2 years of tax returns. So if you just bought the company last year, but the company's been around for multiple years, if you've got access to those tax returns, that would allow you to be eligible. Secondly, we do have a limit regarding ownership. So only the small business can apply for one of these, but not multiples. But also, we will be looking at the ownership of the companies, and those with ownership greater than 10%, we are limiting those owners to only one application as well. So that would mean, for example, if a hotelier owns multiple hotels under different businesses, then but owns more than 10% on each of those hotels, then the owner could only apply for one of their businesses. And this is an attempt to try to spread this amongst as many business owners as we can.
Absolutely. I will also make a comment, since the application form is up. We found, just like everything, when you roll it out quickly, we found a couple of little glitches. I will just like to comment that it says in kind of the middle of the page, if questions 1 and 2 are answered yes, you won't be approved. Please disregard that. The application, that's just a typo. It was an original draft, and so we have corrected the application form. It's going back up on the website this afternoon. Even if you use the wrong form, we're going to disregard that. We simply want to capture, as your business has tried to access other funds, we know there's going to be a lot of analysis done after the fact on, you know, what all fund sources small businesses were able to access. And so we just want to help track some of that data. You are completely eligible for this program, even if you've accessed SBA funds, either through their disaster or their PPP fund program, or any other source for that matter. You are still eligible for this program. We are simply trying to collect that data, so that we kind of know who all was able to access what help.
It was just asked if specific nonprofits were eligible and so forth. And I'd like to say that if you meet the parameters of this program, you're eligible to apply. So you must be within the city limits. You must have 2 years tax returns. You must have revenues, gross revenues, not profit, gross revenues between 100,000 and 5 million. That could be revenues related to grants or membership dollars or donations, or it could be because of the sale of goods and services.
Thank you, John. Are there any other questions? I know that there's been a number of questions that were asked in the chat box, but I do believe that most of those have either been addressed in the chat or have been addressed in the presentation. There was one question about how the loans are being collateralized. Would anyone like to go ahead and answer that beyond the chat group?
Yeah, I don't mind taking that. So we are, when able and when it fits the parameters of the program, going to try to seek collateral. Obviously, this will be a loan for some small businesses, not a grant. And so that's a conversation that we will be having with small business borrowers. That being said, we understand it's a difficult time right now, and that just may not be an option. So we have been given some flexibility on that. But Spag, in our normal situation and through Caprock Business Finance with our regular SBA loans, we're normally taking a second or third lien position in those types of things. So we have some collateral options if that's the best fit for the applicant.
There is a question in the chat box. If you could further talk about the number of jobs field in the application.
Yeah, I'll take that one. We want to recognize also how this has affected your company. And so we're asking for two numbers. We are related to the jobs. One is related to the number of jobs the number of people that you employed on March the 1st of 2020. And then we're also asking for the number of jobs and people you employ as of the date of whatever day you fill this application out. It doesn't give necessarily merit to whether you'll get the award or not. That doesn't have any significance to it. It's for us to help track how this is affecting companies in our area is the main reason why we were doing that.
And can you all clarify a little bit more with regard to personal financial statements and business statements?
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and take that one. Your current financial statements are a 2020 balance sheet and profit and loss statement. Your personal financial statement will be kind of like a financial snapshot of the financial condition of the business owner themselves, essentially.
Okay. There is another question. As you all know, there's new funding for both the PPP and the EIDL loan that's making its way through Congress, hopefully with a successful end toward the end of this week. Will this affect someone's ability to get an EIDL loan from SBA?
No, our program is completely separate. Again, we are asking if you applied for that, if you're able to get that. But getting this funding will not impact you applying for SBA funding, and getting SBA funding won't impact you for applying for this funding either. I did see a question about 1099 contracted employees, and yes, same thing that John said about nonprofits. If you can provide the documentation and meet the revenue requirements, then yes, we are still able to work with companies that work in that manner.
And I think they were also asking if they should be counted as employees. We would prefer you just to do the ones that are full-time for you, because we recognize that the contracted employees might apply and they would be counting themselves over there.
Is a personal financial statement necessary for each person in the company over 10%?
Yes, we do like to see all small business owners that own more than 10% of the company to provide us with a personal financial statement. And if you need a personal financial statement form, please email the email box and we will get you one to fill out. So you don't have to come up with a new structure. We already have a structure in place.
If an individual has 40% ownership on 2 restaurants, can they apply for a loan for both?
Yeah, they actually can apply for one of them, but you can, because they own 2 greater than 10%, they can only apply for assistance with one of them. They can't apply for the second one.
Okay. And
just to clarify, they can still apply and they can still get an award. It can only just be for one of the businesses, not for any of the others that they own of any business greater than 10%.
Okay. And just to clarify again, it's P&Ls, profit and loss statements, balance sheets for 2019, but tax returns for 2017 and 2018, correct? But
Yes.
not for 2019?
Yeah, well, if you have 2019 tax returns, we will gladly take them, but we understand that not everyone has filed for their 2019 taxes yet. So a year-end statement for 2019 will work just as well for us.
And from a nonprofit standpoint, you know, the nonprofit isn't actually owned. So does that exclude nonprofits from needing to provide personal financial statements?
No. On the personal financial statements, I'll let Kelly handle that, or Naomi.
Yeah, since there is no principal owners, no financial statements required, no personal financial statements required for nonprofits.
Okay, and can you all clarify exactly sort of how to navigate on the Spag website on where to find the application?
Yes, I'm putting something in the chat box right now, but if you go again to www.spag.org, spag.org, there's a button right at the top that says Support Lubbock Fund. And the only thing there is our application and this slide deck. So that should be easy to find. If for some reason you still can't navigate that, we can send it out via email if somebody contacts us. But I looked at it earlier and it was there, so it should still be there.
Okay.
Kelly, Norma, just real quick, there was a quick question about S corporations. They couldn't find a box on the application for S corporations.
Oh yeah, just this part. They could just write that in at the top, and we'll make some fine adjustments to the application form already, but they could just put, you know, S on there. I think it just says C corp.
Okay, and I think we're getting a couple of other questions. One that was asked a while back is the slides that were presented in this webinar, are those going to be available somewhere for download?
Yeah, this slide deck is already on the Spag website. If you click on that at the top right corner of Spag's website, it says Support Lubbock Fund, and one option is Program Overview. I'm looking at it right now so I can help navigate it. One says application form, and that's the application form that we need you to complete. And one says program overview, and that's this actual slide deck that Naomi and I just presented.
And just to confirm, once the application is completed, they should email it to supportlubbockfund@spag.org. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And like Naomi said, if anything is missing, so if we get your application but not your tax returns, we will respond to the applicant and say, we got your application, but here's what you're missing. And you need to submit all of that back into us so that we can process your application.
Okay. I have a question here. I'm going to read through it. I haven't had a chance to read all the way through it yet, but if 2019 and 2018 tax returns are available, does that negate the need for the 2017 tax return? So you just need 2 years worth, basically, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think that's what I see for questions for now. So I'll give sort of a one more chance type of warning. Okay, and I do have one on your website. I think someone's trying to access it via phone, and it's not, the application's not available there.
If they could just send that email to supportlubbockfund@spag.org, I'll shoot the application over to them directly. we're navigating all sorts of new norms, IT issues, excessive webinars, rolling out loan programs really quickly. So there may be some bumps in the road, but we're going to do our best to work with the small business community in the city of Lubbock.
We really appreciate that. I don't see any other questions, so
Norma?
I definitely want to thank you guys.
Hey, Norma, there is one other one I see on there, and it was just a quick question about does the business need to be located in the city limits or should it be in Lubbock County? And I want to address that. We recognize that Lubbock is influenced so much by our region, with people that live in other places and work here, and people that live in Lubbock and work in our region. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and we recognize how important our region is to us. Unfortunately, our funds are very, very limited in the terms of total dollar amounts. And even just inside the city limits of Lubbock, there's upwards of 7,000 businesses here. And so for this particular reason, we have decided to limit the availability of these funds to specifically be for businesses inside the city limits of Lubbock. We know that doesn't include everyone, and hopefully SBA funds are available. There are a variety of sources, including the Lubbock Chamber, where they pointed you to get assistance through the SBA, and there's even a triage group to help answer questions with the SBA's funds. And we would continue to point you to those new funds that are going to be that have just been released. So please follow the Chamber of Commerce's website and to get more information there. But this fund is meant to be specifically for the businesses within the city limits of Lubbock.
And I would just add to that, if I can, Spag has been operating a separate pool of money, a revolving loan fund, for about 30 years for the entire Spag region. We are currently working with the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration to access more funds for the Spag region to enhance that program. Unfortunately, and I think John has already mentioned this fact, they're just not at this point able to move as fast. So we do have funds coming for the rest of the region, including Lubbock County. They're just not here yet. And so this program is rolling out right now for the city of Lubbock, and then we'll be moving forward and sharing that information as soon as we can for the rest of the region.
Thank you all. And as John mentioned, we have launched our business recovery and displaced worker recovery website. That is in this together, lbk.com. We're going to be including information about this loan program, but also we're continuously updating that website with additional small business relief links and solutions. Some of those are nationwide, some are sponsored, corporately sponsored, etc. So we have a variety of information that's up there for that.
Norma, I saw one question that just went past the top part there related to gross profit versus gross revenue. This is based on gross revenue. So if your gross revenues, which is very different than gross profit, if your gross revenues are between $100,000 and $5 million, then that is one of the criteria for being eligible for this program.
Great. And I don't see any other questions. Some of them are scrolling by pretty quickly, so I apologize if we missed any. If we did miss any, we're going to be saving this chat and passing it on to LEDA and to Spag so that they can follow up with any type of responses for you or publish any type of information that might be helpful as well. I, on behalf of the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce, want to applaud and thank this partnership between LEDA and the South Plains Association of Governments. You did get this on the ground very, very quickly, and that is very much what our small businesses need. So we appreciate the thought that went into this, but also the rapid nature that it was brought about, bringing solutions to our businesses. Thank you all very much. Are there any other remarks or questions from our speakers?
I want to say thanks so much to Tim Pierce and Kelly and Naomi with Spag. They've just been phenomenal at moving with us as we began to develop this. My team has been phenomenal to work with, and it's through their conversations with individual businesses that we've decided to put this program together the way that we have. And I appreciate so much the Chamber of Commerce hosting us today to get the word out about this. more information is available on our websites, and we do encourage all of our local businesses that meet these parameters to apply. It is a limited amount of source of funds, and at this time, these will be the only sources of funds we have available for this Support Lubbock Fund. We do hope, as small business owners, that you just try to survive these next few weeks, these next few months, as we try to get the economy back. I know each of our teams that are partnering on this is working very diligently to not only help get Lubbock open and the state open, but also to encourage commerce, good commerce, to be taking place in our community. I see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I know many others do. I know it's very, very difficult for our small businesses right now. Hopefully this helps you bridge it, but no matter what, please try your very best to keep the lights on and keep the doors open, and we'll work to get this economy back as soon as possible. I really appreciate everyone and their willingness to be here today.
Thanks to all of you, and thanks to all of our business people on here that have taken the time out of what's a challenging time to be with us today. We appreciate you. Thanks a lot.